Okay, I'm going to need to give you guys some backstory about this comment that I received. During the course of this conversation, I was asked about modern medicine. I advised the commenter that I believe that a lot of modern day medicines fall under pharmakia or sorcery in the Bible. For instance, let's take a look at Revelation 18:23 when it says that all the nations were deceived by sorcery. If we go to the interlinear right here and scroll down to the word used for sorcery, you'll see that the words sorcery and magic are derived from the Greek word pharmakia, which is where we get the root word for pharmacist and pharmacy. And it says that the practicing of sorcery is the use of administering drugs, poison, sorcery, magical arts, often found in connection with idolatry. So for this reason, my family has chosen to abstain from medicines, even over-the-counter ones. Now, can I tell you if Tylenol breaks the dietary laws or breaks the laws of God for sorcery? I can't tell you that for sure. But when it comes to this old jibby-jabby everyone's been talking about for the last few years, I can definitely tell you that 100% falls under the sorcery pharmakia guidelines in the Bible. But either way, my family's chosen to abstain from even over-the-counter drugs. If we aren't feeling good, we choose to use herbs and vegetables to help us feel better. Just like chicken noodle soup. I mean, it is proven undeniably that homemade chicken noodle soup with garlic and onions and thyme and carrots and jalapenos has a bunch of different healing properties. So yes, I'd much rather eat chicken noodle soup to help me feel better than to go take over-the-counter or prescription drugs from a pharmacist. When I told the commenter that, they said that the use of herbs for healing is witchcraft. But that's not what I'm talking about, and I think that's taking it way too far. You're basically telling me that eating chicken noodle soup because I don't feel good is witchcraft, and that's just not true. I'm not talking about making snake oil potions or mixing, tree roots with the eye of newt to make some healing potion. I'm talking about eating garlic and vegetables and herbs. In my opinion, that does not fall under witchcraft. And when I told this person that, they went on to say that sickness is a curse from God for disobedience. Now, I'm not going to deny that God said he will create sicknesses for disobedience. I mean, you can read it in Deuteronomy 28. But that doesn't mean every time you get sick, it's because you're disobeying God. I mean, there's proof of that in Scripture. Look at the book of Job, for instance. Job was being tested by Satan, and he was given sickness. I mean, he had boils and sores all over him. And Job wasn't disobedient to God whatsoever. In fact, Job was so obedient that he gave sacrifices to God for his children on the off chance that they even thought something that went against God's ways. The sickness that Job was given had absolutely nothing to do with disobedience. And my next example is Paul. 2 Corinthians 12. So to keep me from being conceited because of the surpassing greatness of the revelations, a thorn was given me in the flesh, a messenger of Satan to harass me, to keep me from being conceited. 3 times I pleaded with the Lord about this, that it should leave me. But he said to me, my grace is sufficient for you, for my power is made perfect in weakness. Now there's a lot of speculation about what Paul's ailment was, but I believe it had something to do with his eyes. In Galatians 4, Paul says they would have plucked out their own eyes and given them to Paul if they would have been able to do that. And we know that after Paul's coming to Jesus moment, if you will, he was blinded for a while. So this ailment that never left Paul might have had to do with his eyes. Maybe it didn't. But either way, if you believe that Paul actually was obedient to God and actually got a real revelation from Jesus, then this sickness that he had nothing to do with disobedience. Now, there's going to be people on both sides of the aisle with this one, because I know a lot of people still think Paul was a false prophet. I'm not going to get into that discussion. I don't think Paul was false, and I believe that Paul actually taught the Torah and did have inspired words to say. But regardless of what you believe, Paul was given an ailment, and it has nothing to do with disobedience as far as we can tell. But it is kind of ironic that this all happened to Paul, and the person that's commenting on this video about this that I'm having a conversation with is using Paul's words to basically justify that we don't have to keep the law physically anymore, that it's all spiritual and that it's not carnal. But the thing is, when you deny your flesh its desires, that's living in the Spirit. And God tells us how to deny our flesh in His law. That's exactly how the law is spiritual, because it's telling you how to deny your flesh to walk in the Spirit with God. But circling back to the original point of this video, I don't believe if you eat herbs and vegetables to make yourself feel better when you're sick, you're participating in witchcraft. I'm sure you can use vegetables and herbs for witchcraft potions, but that's not what we're talking about here. It's scientifically proven that all these herbs and vegetables God gave us have certain healing properties. Like garlic is good for inflammation. Thyme is good for if you have the sniffles. Rosemary, all these things that God gave us are scientifically proven to help you when you have certain ailments. Like chicken noodle soup. That's why it heals people when you have a cold. But chicken noodle soup is not witchcraft. Now again, I can't tell you 100% if using Tylenol counts as witchcraft. But I can tell you it's probably a better idea to try and eat some chicken noodle soup or garlic or onions or herbs than to buy all these over-the-counter drugs. That's just my opinion though. You can agree or disagree with me, but eating vegetables is not witchcraft. I'm sorry, I don't care who you are. Yes, could vegetables and herbs be used in witchcraft? Sure. But eating them in food? Not witchcraft. I'm sorry. There's no way you can reasonably justify that to me. Now, for the sake of argument, I want to look at the book of 1 Enoch with you guys. The book of Enoch expands on the account of Genesis, notably when the fallen angels came down here and corrupted humanity. And it tells us what each one of these angels did to corrupt humanity. Chapter 7 verse 10 says this, "Then they took women, each choosing for himself, whom they began to approach, and with whom they cohabitated, teaching them sorcery, incantations, and the dividing of roots and trees." The dividing of roots and trees is synonymous with sorcery in this passage. But it also talks about incantation and the dividing of roots and trees. For the most part, we don't eat roots and trees. We eat vegetables and herbs. And I believe that the eating of vegetables and herbs does not fall under sorcery. After all, in Genesis, God did say He gave us every green herb for food. The fact that those green herbs and vegetables might help us when we're sick, it does not mean we're participating in sorcery. Again, if you're making some kind of snake oil potion with roots and eye of newt and praying incantations over it, I'm sure that falls under sorcery, but not eating chicken noodle soup to make yourself feel better if you got the sniffles. If you want to disagree with me on any of this, great, but I need more proof than witches used herbs at some point. I'm sure every single human that's lived long enough has eaten herbs. And again, when it comes to over-the-counter drugs, you all are going to have to make your own choice. My family has chosen to abstain from those because we know that whatever they're made of didn't come from God.